Welcome to Lulu Studios. My name is Anthony, and with me in the studio today is Julie. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
Would you please introduce yourself to our viewers today?
Yes, sure. Hi, my name is Julie Mode. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm here today to talk about my late brother, John Mode, who passed away 5 years ago.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And obviously, it takes a lot of courage to be here to talk about your late brother. As a family, I know it's not easy. And would you please share with us who was Kamau?
Kamau was a very vibrant young man with a great and bright future, in my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
He was very smart. He topped his school, both high school and primary school in Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
He got the privilege to come to the U.S., United States, and he got a partial scholarship to one of a very prestigious college, Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts.
It is. Mm-hmm.
And he came here with a partial scholarship. So I feel like that was a great achievement on his end.
He must have been smart. He got a sponsorship straight from Kenya.
Correct.
Nice. How old was he?
He was 20.
20.
Right.
Nice. How was he growing up?
So Kamau was very goofy. Very, very goofy.
Mm-hmm.
He was very, also kept to himself, a man of very few words. And those who knew him knew how caring he was. And he loved life. He was a man that really loved life.
Nice. How was his social life when he moved to the U.S.?
So that sort of changed a little. Being a man that keeps to himself,
Yeah.
I feel like in the U.S., that is sort of encouraged, being by yourself.
Yeah.
Not because you can make friends, but because the environment to which we are accustomed to is work, school, home. So
And the culture shock.
right, and the culture shock. So it's a very different environment from back home. So I feel like being in the United States and being a very quiet and kept to himself guy was sort of not a good combination.
So was he quiet and kept to himself in Kenya and as he was here?
Actually, not really. So in Kenya, surprisingly, he had tons of friends, and not just friends from school. He made friends in our neighborhood. He made friends with family, So it's quite contrary to here, where all the friends that I knew were probably friends from his study group, a girlfriend here, and nothing else. So it's quite different.
So how did Kamau pass away?
I tried to get a hold of Kamau on his phone for 4 days in a row, and I was unsuccessful. So at this point, I was very nervous because that was not like him. I went to school and I found out that he had not reported to school for the semester, and this was probably day 5 where I filed a police report. About 3 or 4 days after that, I had police come to my house and notified me that they had found Kamau under the Golden Gate Bridge, and that's in San Francisco. That's on the west coast of America, the United States, and it's quite a distance from the East Coast where we live in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that was a huge shock.
It must have been. So I'm sorry about that. So days into him being found, had you noticed something different in him?
I had not noticed anything different, and that could be because we did not live together. Kamau lived in school, and school is in Worcester. That's about an hour and a half drive from where I lived in Raynham, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So I really did not notice anything unusual.
Okay, you said it took 4 days for him to be found.
Right.
How was the search?
It was very frustrating at first because when I filed for a police report, and I don't know if many people understand, but as an adult, if you are missing, you're not considered missing unless there's signs of struggle, blood, or any sign of struggle.
Yeah.
So it was a really hard time for me to convince the policeman that this was unusual behavior, that I haven't seen my brother in 4 days, almost 5 days. So they put out a bolo alert, be on the lookout for his car. And that's when they discovered his car at the Golden Gate Bridge, parked, and yeah.
Okay, and how did your family receive the news, and how did the community respond?
So there was a lot of denial, both from my family and close friends of Kamau. The cause of death was not immediately determined. So once we got the report, the autopsy report, about a month after, and it was confirmed that Kamau had died by suicide. It was a struggle for my family to come to terms with this, because you're thinking, this, how can this happen to us? This is Kamau. How can this happen in our family? And I think, and we didn't immediately disclose this information to the public, or rather even some of our family, because we were in fear of being judged, fear of being questioned. There's a culture where people, mostly in Kenya, I think it's more acceptable here in the US compared to Kenya, where people will ask, why did he do it? Why didn't you notice the signs? Why? And I'm not just saying that. I got these questions. Why didn't you notice your brother was stressed? And I feel like that's one of the reasons people are afraid to step forward with such information, that my so-and-so passed away by suicide. The fear of judgment.
Fear of judgment.
Right.
And of course, even in our community and other communities at large, that is a problem, a huge problem, especially in, like I mentioned before, our African cultures. So what was your takeaway as a family from this?
So first, this brought us very close together. We became very open to each other. And during this process, we found out that we were our own support system. We have very close friends who also were a support system. But for instance, my brother and I sharing the pain that we have of losing another brother, it sort of brought us so close together, and we understood each other more. And I feel like what we took out from this situation is, we need to talk to each other as family, as friends. We need to talk to each other.
And we need to talk about this.
We need to talk about this. We need to talk about our feelings.
And do we talk about it as mental illness, or what?
Mental illness is something people are ashamed of and shouldn't. And when we say mental illness, it's a stigma. When someone brands me as having a mental disorder, it's a stigma. It's a stigma. And depression, for instance, is something a lot of people are not open to talking about. People harbor feelings, and I feel like what people need to do is talk. Talk. And I know it's easier said than done, but during this time when I lost my brother, I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I found comfort in listening to people who had attempted suicide. And I feel like that sort of opened my eyes, and I not only understood why my brother did what he did, but it just gave me some sort of comfort knowing he was suffering. He was suffering. I do not okay him doing what he did. It hurts the people that are left behind. But I only wish we could have done more. And I think the biggest part is regret. I wish we did more. I wish we knew,
Yeah. So as a community, what do you think we should do so that we could maybe help those who are going through the same?
So first, everyone needs to work on themselves. Judgment, people are bottling up emotions because they're afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
People are not disclosing how they feel because they're afraid of what so and so will say. And I don't want to act like an expert that knows about depression because I don't, but I feel like we need to be more supportive of each other. And if I'm supportive of my friend, checking up on my friend often, who I probably would not notice any sign of depression, because again, depressed people are not like always sad.
Yes.
You know, they're not always locked up.
Yeah.
You know, it takes you by shock.
Yeah.
So as a community, and mostly here in the United States, where our culture is work, school, you know, we barely see each other except in social events. So I feel like we need to reach out to people, have that one, at least one or two close friends where when you're having a bad day, you know, talk to them, you know, and stop bottling feelings. Do not bottle your feelings up.
So the purpose of you sharing this is to create awareness.
Right.
And there is a lot of campaigns going on to create awareness. Do you feel they are impacting the community the right way?
Absolutely. You know,
what could be done more?
I'm very encouraged by people coming forward, speaking about their pain, speaking about how they're dealing with it, creating awareness. I'm very encouraged, and I feel like that's what gave me courage to step forward and sort of admit to myself, and of course with my family's permission, admit to the world that this is what happened to my brother, and just let people know that there's help out there. There's so much help, you know, from friends. And also I feel like it's okay that some families have not accepted. It is okay, you know.
Yeah.
It's okay not to accept that your loved one died by suicide.
Yeah.
It's okay not to talk about it until you're ready. It's taken us 5 years to talk about it. It is also okay because everyone grieves different.
That's
everyone,
true.
You know, we're all different. We're all different. And I feel like the community at large shouldn't be judgmental or pointing fingers or
asking too many questions.
Or asking questions. True. A funny thing, when my brother died, most questions I got was, how did he die? You know, you're grieving, you're very confused. It's a very delicate time of your life. And you're getting questions like, how did he die? And of course, since people here in the United States had known where my brother's remains were found.
Yeah, it was in the media.
Right, it was in the media. So it was very easy to come to a conclusion that he died by suicide. So a lot of people would ask, how did you not know? And, you know, I know this is 5 years ago, but people need to be sensitive, very sensitive, you know.
And give the family space and, you know, to share whenever they feel it's necessary, if ever.
If ever, correct. Because your grieving might be very different from mine. My reason for sharing might be different from your reason for not sharing.
That's
so, judgment. It boils down to judgment. And for us, it was more of shame. You know, how did this happen? You know? And particularly for me, you know, my brother came to the United States with only me as his family. So, you know, I was afraid of what would people say back home. Did you not take care of your brother? Did you not notice he was depressed? You know, so but I got a lot of support from my family, from my immediate family and my friends, my close friends.
Beautiful. So 5 years later, the school where he went has honored him.
Right.
Tell me about that.
I was very surprised when WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, called me about 2 months ago and invited me to a homecoming where they had a reveal for music outside the school library. And they were having it in honor of my late brother, John Muthe. So that really took me by surprise, and I'd say we're humbled at the least.
It's a great honor.
It is, it is. And it brings back great memories of who he was and the lives that he impacted.
And they have actually made it to be a really big event.
Right, correct, correct. So, yeah.
Nice. What may have led the school to accord him such a great honor?
So, I honestly do not know. But if if I was to have a wild guess, my brother impacted so many people. He impacted so many people's life. And I think some of his friends that reached out to me told me that the best way they could honor John's memory was to recommend that the mosaic carried his name.
Nice. Thank you so much, Julie, for coming to share about your lovely late brother. I know it's not easy, and you gathered enough courage to share. It's for the good of our community.
Right.
And we really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.